In the vast landscape of video games, there exists a hidden gem that challenges traditional norms and ventures into uncharted territories of creativity and imagination. A game that defies conventions and invites players into a surreal journey unlike any other. I want to invite you on this journey, where we'll explore the narrative, events, themes, and how all of the pieces fit together to create one of the best indie horror games I've ever played. Mouthwashing is an instant classic. Before we start, it's worth to note that this game's narrative is delivered non-linearly. We'll be jumping back and forth in time between what I'll refer to from now on as the incident. More on that later. The very first screen welcomes us to the Tulpar, working for Pony Express, a long-haul space freighter that is currently mid-journey, with half of the way still to go, with the final line saying, "I hope this hurts. Remember this. It will be important later."
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
The game begins proper with a glitchy transition into the protagonist's eyes. These transitions happen every time the game loads or switches perspectives. It's a very interesting choice that helps fuel the nightmare insanity that will go down in later chapters. The text on screen says 0 days before the crash, and the character we're controlling notices there's space debris just ahead and needs to course correct to avoid crashing into it. This is where you take control for the first time. Mouthwashing likes to occasionally throw you into these point-and-click style sections, always accompanying specific moments or interactions. And as a big fan of point-and-click games, me likey.
There's nothing wrong with
point-and-click games
for the greater good. Me likey. Me like.
You can click the ship's steering wheel and two options show: steer right and leave. If you've been paying attention, you notice that one of the previous prompts told you that you need to go left to avoid the collision. With no other options, you steer right. Autopilot gets engaged automatically as a safety precaution. You start getting more nervous. Not only did you just put the lives of everyone on board at stake, but you lost money too. This shit getting real too quick. There's a red button on the table to override emergencies. We have to push it, but it's locked. Leaving the captain's chair and looking around the room, you find an utility locker with a bunch of items in it. A rope, a scannable kit that only the captain can access, hint hint, and most importantly, the emergency key. In this locker, there's also the very first missable collectible of the game, an employee card of someone named Anya. These employee cards can be found at various points in the game, with one existing for each character in the story. They don't really change anything in the game going forward, they're just a nice little tidbit of lore if you're good at exploring. With the key in hand, you unlock the button and disengage the autopilot. Brace for impact. With nothing more to do but wait, you walk out. And corridor, after corridor, after corridor, you notice them. With each hallway you cross giving way for more Pony Express posters on the walls. These never-ending walls. We reach the locked door, and going back, we see him. I'm sure it's nothing. I'm sure we can go back and leave. Making your way to the previously closed door and... Alright, time to go back yet again? God, these hallways are confusing. Alarms are blaring. Where are we going? Why is everything a dead end? Why? The game jumps 2 months after the crash. This is where we meet the cast, who are currently discussing the possibility of opening the cargo hold. We have Swansea, an older gentleman, a veteran, and he's been on this job for decades. He's abrasive and oftentimes will be rude and defensive towards you, a behavior that will be explained in future revelations. Daisuke, who's an intern and cheerful chap all around, helping out wherever needed. Anya, the ship's nurse, who seems anxious and avoidant, perfectly understandable under the circumstances, I'm sure nothing more happened with her.
Foreshadowing.
And Curly, who's the last character to be introduced, but he's not present at the table. Yet. The crew is currently discussing a way into the cargo hold. Food is running low and the crash caused them to become derelict. The only way they can hope to survive is by praying they have something valuable or useful for survival as cargo. I had no idea about this, by the way, but apparently it's quite common for cargo trucks, ships and whatnot to not know what they're transporting, as it's usually fragile or has regulations to not open until drop-off, so this is quite realistic even for a space freighter. After a bit of back and forth, Swansea starts becoming increasingly stressed, mentioning that we need the captain's scanner to access it, and that the captain is kind of not good right now. Swansea also mentions the captain will sing you the blues. I might be completely dead wrong on this theory, by the way, that I'll present later, but remember this. This will be important. Jimmy, our character, says that we can bypass the captain entirely if we get the scanner, and that for better or for worse, he's the captain now.
I'm the captain now.
Welcome to the Tulpar. Officially, now, I guess. Here is where the game truly begins. You can walk around, familiarize yourself with the ship's layout, and interact with plenty of props in each room. As you explore the ship for the first time, you'll see that there's foam everywhere, blocking certain hallways, doors, and windows. This is a safety procedure to protect the ship so it's not exposed to the outside space. On the lower level, you find Swansea again, who's guarding the utility room. He won't let you enter even though you're the captain, because he's working through a solid wall of foam. The goal? His tools. He mentioned that it would be easy to mess something up inside and kill all of them, and that no one else but him can do it. Daisuke is dumb, Anya almost injured herself, and then there's a certain person who only syncs with his downstairs long nose. Wonder who he's referring to here. You eventually back down and find your way inside the cockpit, completely overrun with foam. Checking the same utility locker, you find the scannable bar again, and on the ground, you find the captain's scanner. This is where the main mechanic of the game is introduced. At various points throughout the game you can scan codes, and this will lead you to opening new areas, completing puzzles, or finding your way so your worst nightmares don't kill you. But more on that later. You return to the cargo door, scanner in hand, to find Swansea standing next to it. He mentions that Anya should be there as well, so off you go to find her. In the lobby, you can speak to Daisuke, where he reveals that there's only about 4 months of food left, which is less than their oxygen supply, so even if they make the food last, they'll suffocate before being able to finish it all anyways. Truly a lose-lose situation. Daisuke takes this opportunity to talk about future hopes, how his parents will stuff him once he gets back, how they'll have a hell of a story to tell, and with nothing else better to say, Jimmy responds with, "Yeah, cool. Think of Boba though," and Daisuke's like, "Yo!" You walk back through the lobby corridor, into the medical ward. Opening the door, you find Anya. As a bonus, you get to meet the last character of the game. On the table are painkillers, which you pick up. You talk to Anya, and she says that he is restless, that she can't bear to give him painkillers because of the noises he makes. In my original playthrough, I found this a bit weird as Anya is a nurse, so stuff like this shouldn't really faze her. And Jimmy ponders the same thing, asking if she actually made it through nursing school. This of course has bigger implications, but for now, let's just say that there's a more sinister reason Anya doesn't want to help the captain. That reason being so bad that she asks Jimmy to help her with the captain, whose name is revealed to be Curly. Curly, of course, is the poster boy for Mouthwashing. They've splattered this man everywhere, in various poses, on promotional artwork, you name it. And his most defining feature is by far his big bulging eyeball, judging your every move. He became disfigured, mute, and quadriplegic after the crash. Arguably a fate worse than death. Jimmy berates Anya, saying people need to be worth their titles. And this is where the game very subtly tells us there's something more going on. Was Anya going back on her word and saying she'll do it, and Jimmy instead opting to take charge? One could say he's taking responsibility. You approach Curly, with the game forcing you to click his mouth to open it. Use the painkillers, and...
This is awful in every way.
Anya leaves in a hurry, and Jimmy does what he needs to do. Coming out of that sequence and exploring the medical ward a bit, you find a busted vent that's currently blocked to prevent injury. On the table sit all the remaining painkillers. Anya can be found on the ground, clearly showing symptoms of having a panic attack. If you talk to her, she asks you why he, Curly, did it, with Jimmy saying that there's nothing to say, following with,
What answer would make you feel any better?
Anya's response to this question is very telling.
I have to believe that our worst moments don't make us monsters, Jim.
Again, remember this. Jim dismisses her feelings and says Curly tried to kill everyone alongside him, and that there's very little reasons to keep him alive. The crew, however, had already agreed they would, but Anya clearly wasn't 100% on board with Curly being alive. You make your way back to the cargo hold. Using the scanner, you find out what the code for the door is, you punch in the code, and... the game cuts to 7 days before the crash. We are now playing as Curly, before, you know, who has just wrapped up a psych eval from Anya. She does this regularly, as part of medical protocols. She also mentions that there's one psych eval left to do, Jimmy's. She mentions that he doesn't take them seriously, that he writes dumb stuff like horses make me horny. And clearly, Jimmy makes Anya uncomfortable. Curly, however, doesn't quite see this and simply offers to take over for her. That he and Jim have known each other for a long time. Remember this. Before the conversation wraps, Anya hands Curly a piece of paper written by Swansea saying,
They can't expect me to perform miracles.
Taking full control of Curly now, you go back to the lobby to find it normal. Hallways are normal. Everything is normal. Just goes to show how much of an impact the incident truly had. You find Jimmy, and they talk about how there's always something broken in the utility room, how they added Daisuke last minute, and they didn't really account for having 5 people on board. Jimmy says we could do something about the commotion inside, or simply close the door. We're good, Captain. So we go in, and we find Swansea and Daisuke, with Daisuke up to his hips in foam. Swansea berates Daisuke, saying he's useless, and that he's been put there just to annoy him. Swansea would have helped him out of the foam, but only the captain has authority to unlock the fire axe case. You know what this means? Time to puzzle. You walk back to Daisuke, chop up the foam around him, and release him from his shackles. After that little commotion, we have Swansea saying that the vent is collapsed. It's mega dangerous, and someone could really get hurt in there. Swansea asks for the axe so he can tidy up, and you tell him this could have damaged the pods, to be careful, and to keep the axe until he's done. Jimmy's in the doorway waiting for you, and following a brief small talk, he tells you to meet him in the cockpit. The way to the cockpit, however, is... shifting. Were these stairs that long before? And then... we fall. Stranded in a sea of blood, with the stars above us, no direction, we'd look around for anything when you hear it. Emergencies, warnings, they're appearing everywhere. All of these hopeless ladders raising from the ground, and a sun in the horizon. You blink, and there's nothing. White, and a door at the end. Soundless, you go forward. Opening the door brings you to the cockpit, and Jimmy doesn't want to bother with this. He says he'll just bullshit his way through it, and Curly really doesn't seem to mind. Then he asks Jimmy how he feels off the record. Jimmy says he really likes being in control, and Curly reminisces that he had a tough time on Earth, that he's doing much better here. And this prompts Jimmy to show more of his true colors, saying Curly is annoying because he's always had all the attention. Then Jimmy asks him,
How come it feels like you're standing on the edge of a bridge with your feet in cement?
This is a clear indication that Curly, just like Jimmy, isn't completely sane. He's happy right now, but terrified that this is all he will amount to. He's scared of trying something new, because of how high he already is in this particular ladder. Mouthwashing has plenty of disturbing horror sequences and set pieces, but I do find it very interesting that capitalistic horror as a theme is so well woven into the narrative, with, again, very subtle lines referring, but never confirming it. The conversation is interrupted with an incoming message. It's Pony Express, their employer, with a message for the captain. You take the paper, and as you go to read it from your inventory, the game transitions to a new scene, with red text scrolling across the screen. If you slow it down, you can make out the words, "Take responsibility." You find yourself in what looks like to be a cargo hold with nothing but boxes around you. At the end of this corridor, a TV. Let's see what's on. You scroll through the various channels here, from old-timey cartoons to some really weird, spooky skeletons. Eventually, after enough clicks, after the ad plays, we finally find out what we've been hauling all this time. Yes, what you're thinking is true. We're talking about thousands of mouthwash bottles. All this time. This trip for fucking mouthwash. Anya comments that the sugar in it makes it so they can't use it as disinfectant. And that's when Swansea sees
14% ethanol.
you know where this is going. Two months in, with no hope or survival, Swansea decides to ruin all his efforts over the last 15 years and drinks, ruining his sobriety. This action makes the group spiral further. Daisuke's still naive, Jimmy doesn't give a shit, and Anya's losing what little sanity she has left.
Daisuke, come here. Anyone teach you how to drink like a man?
We're back to the moment Pony Express messaged us. It's time to break the news to everyone. You walk to the lobby when...
Surprise.
Surprise! Look at your face!
Gotcha.
Cheers.
The crew decided to celebrate the yearly communal trip. There's no specific day, so today it is. By tradition, they do one person per haul. With Swansea being the latest one, that means you, Curly, are next on the list and have to bake a cake. Did I expect to have a cooking minigame in my mouthwashing game? No. Am I happy to have a cooking minigame in my mouthwashing game? Yes.
Cooking Mama just got fatter! Yay!
This puzzle is quite simple, with you simply following instructions on a book stuck to the wall. As you punch the correct code in the machine, you get the right ingredients. You blend them together, and bada bing bada boom, you're a chef, Curly! Let's enjoy the cake, eh? The crew asks for a speech, and Curly decides to break the news.
We will receive the paycheck for this delivery. I don't know any more than that. Pony Express finally kicking the bucket, huh?
This confirms it. Pony Express just went out of business, leaving them stranded to their own devices. Everyone is fired. Swansea even mentions that this is one of the last manned cruise ships around, with the rest probably replaced by AI. Jimmy confronts Curly, asking when he got the news. Curly says that he was told to wait to tell them, but he felt bad and broke the news before he was supposed to. Jimmy shows his true colors again, proceeding to go on a tirade against everyone in the crew. Says Anya never got into medical school with the excuse, let's be real. God, what a piece of shit. Jesus. Swansea is nearing retirement, berates Daisuke saying he'll be fine because he has a mom and dad. Curly, in the eyes of Jimmy, won. Curly is headed for better. Doesn't matter what happens to everyone else as long as Curly gets to win. This of course couldn't be further from the truth, as Curly feels stuck, powerless and struggles with feelings of not being enough. Jimmy's jealousy and ego, however, are bigger than all of that.
We're the ones you're trying to escape.
The crew keeps spiraling, with Jimmy ending the conversation with,
Let's have some fucking cake.
let's cut ourselves a piece of cake then. Before we finish cutting, we transition to, again, 2 months after the crash. We wake up as Jimmy and are tasked to check on Curly. In the Miracle Bay, there he lies, very much a lot more restless than before. You're unsure if he has taken his meds already, so you're off to find Anya. Going down the stairs to the lower level, you have a constant reminder of him. You find Anya and Swansea in the cockpit, having a conversation before you interrupt. The way the characters react to Jimmy is interesting here, with Swansea saying, "It's you," and Anya literally darting her eyes away from Jimmy as soon as she notices he's there. They're plotting something. Surely. Jimmy then asks Anya if she's given Curly his meds, and she says it slipped her mind. And once again, Jimmy wants to be the one to do it, to take responsibility. Before leaving, there's an optional interaction here with Swansea, where Jimmy comments on the axe. Swansea says the only reason he has it is force a habit, but as we'll see later, it's for a much better and understandable reason. Back in medical, Jimmy comments that there's only a handful of painkillers left, and that Curly will be making a ton of noise really soon. Time to do this again.
Come on, stop with the noise. I know what everyone is thinking. The way they look at me. What could I even say? And then, what would she do? Damn it. Here we are now, me in the driver's seat. Thanks for that. Open up. I hope these make you feel fucking better.
Here we have another transition with the same take responsibility text speeding across the screen. In this segment we find Curly sitting across the table with the birthday cake in front. Jimmy sits. Here Curly speaks with like massive quotes around that. Says that sometimes we're stuck with the subpar stuff, and that's the only way to make the good stuff stick out for being good. Jimmy doesn't get it. And Curly says that they all try to escape many times, that their situation is so bad they wonder if this is what peace means, and if Curly is enough. That sometimes we progress as individuals, we go on to have families, get married and have children, but sometimes all you want to do is have some awful fucking cake with your friend. The little things in life are the things that make it worth living. Curly then asks Jimmy to do the honors. Time to find a knife. This causes you to go down to the bowels of the ship, crossing increasingly disfigured hallways, until you make it to the cockpit and find... Wait, that's not a knife. Wait, feast? Uh-oh. You walk back outside. It's darker than before. And then, as you go up and the music swells, reality hits. Use the axe on Curly when... We're transported to the moment the crew finds out about the mouthwashing. Curly's in medical, Anya and Ice are in the lobby, and Swansea is like, kinda cooking? Swansea, obviously wasted out of his mind, says a couple of peculiar things to you, like,
It'll be all the sad motherfuckers of the tall part in the sky with diamonds.
and
Captain Jimmy, pulling the plug on the party before the last call.
talking to Anya at the dining table, we find her staring at the mouthwash bottle. We ask her if she's thinking about drinking it. She says yes, but that it wouldn't fix anything, as much as she'd like to. Anya then says a very particular line.
Did you know that not all of the medicine aboard was in my office? We store some in a storage locker in the hallway.
The reason she never mentioned this is because after the crash, the emergency foam covered the locker, making it inaccessible without proper tools, said tools being held by a certain balding man. There's some risk to this. We hit the wrong spot and we get sucked out into space. But the medicine is useful, and it's a good excuse to get the axe away from the drunk. Talking to Swansea again, he says the funniest shit.
Jimbo, the man with the plan. This was entrusted to me by our previously tragically inclined leader.
Man, if you know, you know. The conversation gets heated, with Swansea berating Jimmy on how he thinks he's going to do the right thing, how he's taking matters into his own hands, and that if he wants to fix this so badly... After that brief cutscene, you take the axe. Right next to medical, you find the locker and start hacking away at the foam. Inside, you find the painkillers Anya mentioned, but also a bottle of isopropyl. How curious. Turning around, we find Anya standing right here. Happy that you did it. Really happy, actually. Then she asks you to give Curly the painkillers once again. But this time Jimmy snaps, saying that he's trying to fix things, that he's tired of doing all the errands, but he's bearing it, because he's captain. And after all that, he makes Anya feel guilty and goes to give Curly his meds again. This section is super cool as the game goes full diegetic mode with the different objectives showing as Jimmy complains about them. Great stuff there.
Can you get the dog, please? I know how to get there. Can you get the car? I know how to get there. Can you get Roy? I know how to. Can you get Roy? I know how to. Can you get Roy?
Right before doing the Curly ritual, Jimmy starts entering full denial mode, saying Curly was a great captain and that he'll be one again. Yeah, not sure about that one, buddy. This time, barely any resistance. Just Curly whimpering. We're hit with yet another transition. This one says something completely new though. 6 hours until judgment. You lock the door when...
Jimmy, get the fuck out here!
Jimmy is stuck in the cockpit. Swansea is out of his mind. Checking the utility locker, you take the rope, as well as finding a metal pipe. Using both the rope and the pipe, you reinforce the door. Swansea tries to get in Shining style, but... Jesus Christ. We're transported back to 2 days before the crash, taking control of Curly once more. He and Anya talk about how they're having trouble sleeping. Curly tosses and turns, but Anya has found comfort in the night screen TV. She mentions that there's a dead pixel in the upper right corner, but no matter how much you look for it, Curly just doesn't see it. This could be an allegory on how Curly only focuses on the bigger picture, that the little, most important things escape him, while Anya has a constant reminder of something small but extremely impactful in her life. The dead pixel is always at the back of her mind. She then asks how long Pony Express has left for transport, and Curly says 237 days, or around 8 months. The following line is one of the most heartbreaking in the entire game. Anya asks why there's a lock in the medical room, but not the sleeping quarters. Curly ponders and says it's for safety. We're back to Jimmy, 4 months after the crash. Daisuke is freaking out. Anya is stuck in medical, the door won't open, and she clearly needs help. Here goes Hero Jim to save the day. If you try to open the door and talk to Anya, she's barely responsive, just saying,
Yeah, I hear you.
and with the rest of the medicine being in medical as well, this could be really bad. We have to act quick. Jimmy asks if the door is stuck, and Anya reveals that in fact, it's not stuck at all. She locked it. And Jimmy, being such a great character, berates Anya again. This is the last straw. Anya snaps and says the line, I always believed that our worst moments didn't define us, didn't make us beyond repair. She doesn't want this either. This is her chance to escape from all the torment and trauma. This is no mistake. This is her best. Anya then says, I'll take care of it. Jimmy and Daisuke fear the worst. But there has to be a way in, right? Daisuke does mention that there's another way in. It's through utility, through the collapsed vent we saw earlier. That loops into medical. Jimmy convinces Daisuke that they'll make it work. And oh boy, will they. Walking down the all too familiar stairs at this point to the bottom floor, we find Swansea still guarding utility. Looking a little worse for wear. Still intoxicated, he's adamant that he won't let us through. The conversation ends and...
Don't do anything. Stop. I can fix this. Why do you keep fucking saying that? Are you hearing yourself?
This shit show just got shittier. Daisuke is bleeding out and ways to help him are negligible at best. Our best bet, at Swansea's suggestion, is to get the disinfectant that was in the locker near medical. Before leaving, Jimmy mutters to himself,
The cocktail.
breaking down even further. Being pushed by Swansea, Jim blames him, says he had no choice. This will be elaborated on later. For now, the disinfectant is not available. We need to find something else. If you try to check the locker again, you'll find it completely empty. Something Fallout 3 would shamelessly steal 16 years prior. If you enter medical, your vision distorts and shifts, not allowing you to get a clear view of Curly. Interacting with the vent that's now opened, Jamie comments that at least he made it out the other side, referring to Daisuke of course, and that we can still help him. No, we can't. Going down to the bowels of the ship, you find a headstone with the lantern icon on it, with text that you can't quite transcribe. As you shine the scanner, the door opens, and everything becomes a bit more eerie. Following the blood with your scanner down the stairs, your mind starts shifting as well. These never-ending stairs. And then... This is one of the most terrifying sequences of the game, as Jimmy finds himself on top of the storage shelves, acting as catwalks almost. Right next to the player, there's a note with the following clue. A blind beast, aimless and restless. You can't run from it. If you run, just like the note said, you'll attract the beast. But what is this beast, you ask? Oh, you know, just a personification of Jimmy's sexual frustrations mutating into a weird mangled horse reminiscent of the Pony Express logo. No biggie. I do have a theory about this though. Stay tuned. Mechanically, this part is your tried and true make noise, stop, wait for enemy to run away, make noise again, rinse and repeat. Nothing great, nothing wrong with it either, I'm perfectly fine with it. This section isn't too difficult either, with you only needing to make a couple laps around where the game allows you to go before eventually finding one of the last bottles of mouthwash on the ship. Back at the table with the injured Daisuke, you try to use the mouthwash. Suddenly, you're transported right before Daisuke got injured. Here, Jimmy and him discuss how to get to medical, with Jimmy basically convincing both Daisuke and himself that they're doing the right thing. Here, Jimmy suggests we can take out Swansea by making a cocktail. Very weird that Jimmy just somehow knows how to make a roofied cocktail, and they might not even remember after? Sus. Similarly to when you made the cake a couple chapters earlier, you're tasked to use the machine in the kitchen to mix the various ingredients, the first being isopropyl and a healthy dose of mouthwash. Not being able to find sweetener, the next ingredient, Daisuke admits to moving some sweeteners. For safety, of course, and we do find one in his belongings. Mixing that and the previous plain drink we made, we have ourselves a spiked cocktail. Jesus Christ. You go down to the lower floor and talk to Swansea and give him the drink, as a token of friendship and solidarity. Swansea doesn't really care, and starts absolutely going ham on Daisuke, telling him he's wasting his time, that every time he fails he gets uglier. Jimmy cuts him off, and after more passive-aggressive back and forth, Swansea downs the drink and collapses. Time to hit utility, using the key we got off of Swansea of course. Daisuke is wary of doing this, says that there's a reason Swansea is so adamant about safety. Jimmy dismisses this and reminds Daisuke that we're being brave and we're doing the right thing. Entering utility, we have a revelation. It's barely foamed at all, with the cryostasis pods still here, and one of them still working. Daisuke asks how long they can keep you frozen, to which Jimmy responds,
20 fucking years.
At this point, Jimmy has pieced together that the utility room was never foamed up at all. There was never any real danger in the room, and instead, Swansea was keeping the pods safe for a certain someone. Jimmy goes full villain and blames Swansea for everything, accusing him of abandoning all of them. Getting in the pod doesn't guarantee you survival, but another 20 years of chances sounds a lot better than certain death. Currently, we have bigger fish to fry, and the vent leading to medical is still there. Daisuke starts having second thoughts, and Jimmy pushes him, and emotionally manipulates him into getting into the vent, with the final sentences being,
Everyone is counting on you. Captain's orders.
We're left in the dark for a few seconds when... we show up in medical, unsure of who we're controlling, and are tasked with finding the gun. You search everywhere. Medical, lounge, hallways, and as you enter the cockpit, Anya. Here, Curly shouts at Anya, saying that them being let go isn't a reason for her to hurt herself, that she never got psych evals, and clearly, she wasn't fit for duty. He feels guilt that he was never there for her, that he would have done anything for her. For his crew. Anya mentions the gun is in a case she can't open, but she hid the case nonetheless. After Curly pressures her for the location of the gun, she reveals that she's pregnant. Curly is dumbfounded at this revelation, and after asking who the father is, Anya says,
Captain, I told you.
Curly then says they can fix this, that he has known him for a long time, and that he'll talk to him. Anya knows Curly would never hand her the gun for self-defense, so the best she can do is make sure no one, him, gets it either. In the cockpit, you can interact with a piece of paper that informs you of several asteroids in the trajectory, and of course corrections might be required. As you leave the cockpit, we're back to Daisuke. Jimmy, our hero, will definitely fix this. Swansea, however, has a better idea.
Stop. Don't move. It's alright, Daisuke. Calm down. This line of work, you could never become like miserable old Swansea. What a tragedy. Decades of hauling ass for Pony Express. Big mighty bruiser with all his shiny tools. This is where it got me. The good life, huh? I saw you were dumber than a can of paint. Always just chewing my ear off about nothing. Useless ray of goddamn sunshine.
After grieving for a bit on how great their friendship could have been, Swansea has one last request for Daisuke.
Close your eyes, Daisuke.
Jimmy is distraught at Swansea's action, still riding high on his savior complex, saying that he could have fixed Daisuke and that he has to do everything himself, that it's their fault for not giving him time to sink. Swansea, however, sees the truth. It's over. Daisuke will never suffer because of Jimmy ever again. Jimmy fights back, saying that he knows Swansea's plan, that he's hiding utility and manipulating Anya into not trusting him, and now Daisuke is dead. In Jimmy's head, this is the perfect plan for Swansea to save himself. The only response Swansea has to give is that indeed he spoke to Anya, but it was her telling him all sorts of things instead, causing Jimmy to go silent. Swansea is done. He truly doesn't care if Jimmy goes into the cryopod. Whatever story he ends up telling people once he comes out, none of it matters anymore. Jimmy has earned it. The objective updates to get the gun. Remember this. Entering medical, you find Anya, having taken her own life by overdosing on the last supply of painkillers. Below where Curly lays is an open drawer with a case in it. It has a lock, however. The lock for this case has been available to you since the beginning of the game, being inside the same utility locker in the cockpit. If you can't remember the code, you can simply backtrack there, take note, come back, and as you open the case and take the gun, this happens. Curly has finally realized how far gone Jimmy is. There's nothing anyone can do for him. So deep into his own delusions of grandeur and ego that he isn't even thinking about his actions anymore. We try to leave medical when Swansea attacks. Before any of them can react, we're ported back to the day of the crash, in front of medical. As you enter, you find Anya crouching. She mentions she told him, and that the response she received doesn't really make any difference. Curly asked where he went, but Anya doesn't know. She wants him out of this ship. Curly assures her that everything will be fine. A sudden feeling of dread overwhelms you as you leave. Cockpit is where you have to go. At the entrance, you find Jimmy, and again you assure him that everything will be okay. A part of Jimmy already knows that there's no way to fix this. Curly says that he's there for him, but Jimmy snaps, saying that he always got the attention, that now they are truly, without a shadow of a doubt, in big trouble. They go back and forth a bit more, and then Curly says that they have to figure it out together. But Jimmy reminds him that it's not just him, and that it's Curly's fault all of this happened, that he lied when he said that he had everything under control, with one of the last lines Jimmy says to Curly being,
"This was your responsibility, Captain."
Again, Jimmy found a way to spin the narrative and put all the blame on someone else. Truly peak protagonist behavior. As he keeps berating Curly, we are finally shown what he looks like as we shift to Jimmy's perspective. Johnny Bravo, but short hair.
Hey, mama, I'm straight. So whatever makes my dick hard is a woman.
Then it clicks for Jimmy, what Curly said about having feet in cement. Curly is not all there either. Here Jimmy assures Curly that he will take care of it and enters the cockpit.
Jim, tell me you didn't. I should have. I didn't. What the fuck did you do?
Carly tries to stop the crash, but it's too late. We now find ourselves carrying Curly 1 hour before judgment. We carry him to the lounge where everyone is waiting and place him on the table. The crew once again asks for a speech from Captain Jimmy. So Jimmy takes the knife and...
A lot of people struggle to put food on their plates, but that wasn't enough, right, Captain? The lowest rung of your ladder is our highest. Until it was all swept from under your feet. Life isn't even worth living at the same level as us. But I forgive you. All of us do. I won't give up on you, even like this. I believe in you.
Even in the face of all his dead crew and one of his oldest friends mangled and barely holding on, Jimmy is still adamant he will fix this. We transition to yet another Take Responsibility segment, where we're running through crazy huge vents. We catch a glimpse of Daisuke before he clicks into nothingness. What follows is a very interesting mechanic where the game makes you walk backwards, ignoring your responsibilities. After doing that a couple times, you're ported back to a very similar hallway. Only this one falls. You land on a door surrounded by countless pony posters. With no other way, you open the door and fall through. Here, you see an inverted medical room, and what follows is a recreation of what presumably Daisuke had to do to reach medical. Since this is Jimmy's perspective we're playing through, however, the game has a much bigger and more sinister entity waiting for you. Falling through an empty space, you find Swansea tied to a chair, and a gun in front of him. You take the gun and use it on Swansea. As you shoot, the game teleports you to a graveyard. This is where you have to make your final stand against Swansea. He will run around the hallways and try to flank you and kill you with the axe. Your job? Shoot him before he gets to you. This is easier said than done and makes for a very tense segment. Lining up the final shot, Jimmy finally gets rid of the last evil on the Tulpar.
I have something to say. So shut the fuck up and listen. I spent 13 years half cut up to my eyeballs. Drunk, to put it mildly. Then suddenly I saw it, a street light shining in my face. 500 gigawatts of the power of God. A vision of my bloated body found in some ditch. Scared me straight. So I got a collar shirt, mortgage, and a credit card. All the things that make a good man. I hoped I could raise my children to be better than their old man. I wanted to believe I was never one setback away from my worst self. The truth is, discipline, drive, routine, the endless fucking desperation to get shit done. A loving wife, great kids, sobriety. I'm telling you, accomplishments I've been chasing all my life. Never felt as good as I experienced when I crossed the finish line.
In these final moments, Swansea misses being an alcoholic, as the only problem he had at the time was an empty bottle, not family duties, not a job, no other responsibilities. And now that he's at the finish line, he admits those were some of the best days of his life. He has accepted who he is. But Jimmy hasn't.
But you, a cowardly, selfish motherfucker, and you can't even see it. I should have been able to protect the kid.
Swansea does have one final regret though, not helping Daisuke escape the ship, having to opt for a mercy killing instead. After all this, Jimmy only has one thing to say.
I'm going to fix everything.
Swansea says one final
fuck you
before we're back at the scene of the crime. Swansea is dead, shot in the head by Jimmy, in an attempt to fix things. You walk out of the utility room. Hallways start turning and shifting. It's happening again. Suddenly your path is filled with pipes. Below, Curly. A constant reminder of your actions, no matter where you go, or how far you stray from the path, Curly will always be there watching you, more and more intently. As what else is he to do after what you did to him? Game snaps into what can only be described as a meat tunnel. With only one path available, you move forward. You leave the tunnel, only to find that you were inside Curly all along. Following the catwalk, you reach the actual Curly. In front of him is a TV playing multiple old-timey cartoons, and as you're watching one of them, always in the back of your head, the guilt, the horrors of your actions, all masked with naive, childlike innocence. It's almost too much to bear. Here is a very messed up puzzle where you have to spin the valves to make sure each separate, organ path is correct to feed Curly. Someday he'll thank me. Yeah, I don't think so, Jimbo. You feed Curly a piece of his own leg, Hannibal style.
Intend me to be my own Last Supper.
Yes.
And if you get the puzzle correct, this happens. You click the TV and are transported inside, taking control of Jimmy in a fixed camera angle perspective, aimlessly walking through space. At the end of the path, a flaming Curly awaits. He says he wants to go home, and that Jimmy doesn't have to worry. If someone finds them, he'll still be the villain. That Jim will be the better man just like he wanted. Curly says he could have stopped it. What it isn't really specified, but he's taking responsibility. Jimmy, however, still thinks they can both be heroes, that what happened was a mistake. This is a moment where it all dawns on Jimmy. The horrors of his actions are now too much for him to bear. Our final surreal segment has us analyze a horse fetus to detect living beings. This is done by holding the machine against the heart and performing an ultrasound. Eventually, the baby wakes up. Various clips of the mouthwashing ad play in your mind with the words, "I hope this hurts," repeating over and over. You're back at the giant vent. This time, though, you have company. This amalgamation of Pony Express logos could be interpreted in multiple different ways. Early on, it was referred that Jimmy was becoming sexually attracted to horses. And while initially I thought this was a ploy to get him out of the obligatory psych evaluation, it makes more sense that this was only a half-truth, with Jimmy getting increasingly sexually frustrated, which led him to force himself on Anya. The ponies, horse fetus, and all the other weird horse imagery are all Jimmy's demons coming back to haunt him. Kinda like Pyramid Head in Silent Hill 2, just not as hot. At the end of the vent segment, you go through a void filled with the crew's ID cards that become increasingly violent until the hallway turns into a staircase, and the IDs into mouthwashing bottles. At the top, lights reveal the stars of the show: Mouthwash and Polly.
Pony Express is dead. And so are you.
Jimmy knows that if he truly wants to fix this, there's really only one way. This time, Jimmy is truly sorry. Even Polly, his innermost thoughts, acknowledge that. Then he says,
Our worst moments.
it's judgment time. You take Curly. As you walk down the dark corridor, an objective appears. Go home. Yes, I think it's time to call it quits for tonight. Reaching the end of the corridor, you find the last functional cryopod open and... It's okay, Curly. You're going to be okay. You always had my back. I ended up hurting you even though I was trying to save us. But now you'll survive. It's like you said, together we can fix anything. We fixed it. I fixed it. With a final bang, Jimmy takes his own life. And the cryopod activates. Rolling credits at the same time. Okay, so there's lots to unpack here, so let's take this one step at a time and digest together. Let's start with the most common question I see online, which is why are they transporting mouthwash? And the answer I think is very simple. It's to further drive home the point of how meaningless, trivial and numbing everything is. Mouthwash isn't really useful in a survival scenario. And Anya mentioning that it had too much sugar to be used as a disinfectant goes to show that everyone died for shitty mouthwash, not even the good one. Narratively, it makes sense as it contains alcohol to enable Swansea to break his sobriety, it's useless to Anya as a nurse so she keeps feeling inferior, and Jimmy and Daisuke are very impartial to it, which allows them to be more reactive in the story. The entire game is very reminiscent of Silent Hill 2. Funny, it came out a couple weeks before the remake, which is really fucking good by the way, you should play it. But unlike Silent Hill 2, there's no escape, resolution or justice in the end, just Jimmy offing himself. Even after trying to turn his savior complex into actual forgiveness, he instead opted to damn his life to a fate arguably worse than death, and blowing his brains out, failing to take responsibility one last time. Since we're on topic, let's talk about the cryopod and Curly. If you think the cryopod will save Curly, you're sadly mistaken. This game has made it quite clear through the characters' past, their jobs and how they live their lives, and how much they value their possessions and positions in this world, that this is a universe very much ruled by capitalistic values. And them having their company shut down on them, nothing guarantees that someone will come for them. As if you remember, it was mentioned this was one of the last man ships anyways. Curly's losing blood, he has burns all over his body, him waking up would be a miracle after those 20 years. And even then, even if he was rescued, he'd be living as a traumatized, mute quadriplegic. And let's be honest, I don't think he would be alive much longer after being rescued either way. I just want to paint a picture of what Jimmy did at the end wasn't an act of selflessness. Jimmy, to the very end, only cares about himself. And to him, this is him saving Curly, not even caring about what happens to him after he takes his own life. This is a great segue to talk about the villain, the monster, and the true menace of mouthwashing, the one bacteria he couldn't eliminate, Jimmy. Jimmy is a piece of shit. Jimmy forced himself on Anya when he learned the company went tits up. Jimmy is a piece of shit. Jimmy couldn't bear the guilt of his own actions and tried killing the entire crew. Jimmy is a piece of shit. Jimmy blamed Curly for the crash, gaslighting everyone and becoming the master of savior complex and the Lulus. Jimmy is a piece of shit. Now, it's never 100% told to us that Jimmy is a deviant like that, but the game does hint to it. Multiple times. Anya's design was inspired by Shelley Duvall from the Shining movie, with the hair and even clothes being extremely similar. Both characters go through turmoil at the hands of a man, both suffer with feelings of inferiority, and both are victims of something greater. One of the most telling pieces of evidence that Anya is a victim of SA is when she asks Curly why medical can be locked, but the crew quarters can't, which is met with a safety response. Another example is Swansea telling Jim that Anya told him all sorts of things. Anya being disturbed by having to force painkillers in Curly without his consent. Anya saying that she doesn't want him in the ship anymore. Curly asking Anya who the father is and her saying, "I told you." Anya asking Curly to do Jimmy's psych eval instead of her, Jimmy finding Swansea and Anya talking in the cockpit before they switch topic, Anya flinching whenever we talk to her as Jimmy, or even the weird baby abomination in one of the game's final moments, it all points to Jimmy being the perpetrator. I'd like to point out that Curly isn't without fault either, as not only did he fail to protect Anya from Jimmy, but he was also in denial about it the entire time. And another thought I want to throw at you to consider is this. The events of the game only happened because of Curly's kindness. If you think about it, the company went bankrupt and instructed Curly to inform the crew only when they're closer to landing. Instead, he opted to tell them all early, and in a cruel twist of fate, the character's strength becomes a flaw, and the decision caused Jimmy to snap, Anya to fall deeper into depression, and Swansea to become apathetic. If he didn't tell them early, maybe things could have been different. There's 3 key take responsibility moments: the vent for Daisuke, the cemetery for Swansea, and the womb baby for Anya. All of these segments in my perspective are allegories of the actions Jimmy committed leading to these characters' death, as he is always directly involved with them. He was the one that told Daisuke to go into the dangerous vents, causing him to become severely wounded without a chance of recovery, dying with a mercy killing by the hands of Swansea. He essayed and made Anya's life living hell, even before the game began, causing her to become increasingly depressed and unwell until she eventually snapped and, of course, shot Swansea before he could get to him. literally made him his own graveyard. For Anya's sequence, I think it also adds to how Jimmy doesn't really view Anya as a person, but as a walking womb. The baby isn't even human in his eyes, it's a horse, as a reference to him being only half joking when he told Anya he was attracted to cartoon horses. He gives Daisuke a grave, Swansea his time to speak, and Curly the whole apology wall on fire scene, but Anya gets nothing in his mind. The only reference to her is an embryo. It really hits how little he cared for her. And also, this thing has to be a baby horse, right? In the previous scene, Jimmy's pursued through the darkness by a blind and deformed horse. Regardless what happened to Anya, he's denying accountability as far as he can. But when the child is born, the truth will emerge too. The child's depiction as a horse represents that he only sees it as something that's chasing him down. Honestly, there's so many small details, sentences, and moments in this game that not even this gigantic video can do it justice. Swansea axing the screen as foreshadowing to what he does to Daisuke later, the birthday scene where you play as Curly and everyone asks for a speech, and then at the end of the game the same thing happens where you're controlling Jimmy only to everyone be dead except for Curly, Anya hiding the gun herself because she told Curly about the essay and he didn't act, so she hid it herself. Also, real quick, the music in this game also goes incredibly hard, with some of them now being permanent additions to my banger soundtrack playlist. Like seriously, listen to You know that when you can't get the plot and characters out of your head, it's a sign of a great story. Wrong Organ created an exceptional, lasting, and extremely disturbing experience. One that moved me and made me feel things I haven't felt in quite a while. While the gameplay remained simple, that's all it needed to be. A carefully built vehicle, and we're put right in the driver's seat. If you're a fan in any way of horror games, deep, rich, and intricate narratives, Mouthwashing is a must-buy. These developers deserve your support, and you deserve to experience this game for yourself. Get lost in it. Truly take responsibility. A salute to Captain Curly, and rest in peace to the wandering souls in space. May they find their way home, and may we as well. And remember, pain is how we know we're still living. Hey, you're finally awake! Well, if you watched that whole thing, wow, thank you so much. This video took a lot of effort and research, but I enjoyed this game so much. It has been living rent-free in my head since I played it. I only hope that I did it justice, that I kept it entertaining, and that I helped you understand why I think Mouthwashing really deserves your time and attention. Please check it out, it's on Steam, it costs less than the McDonald's menu. Do yourself a favor and experience this masterpiece for yourself. Before you leave, don't forget to leave a like and do that YouTube jazz, and thank you again so much for watching. I shall see you next time.
Anya, I'm dying. Please stop beatboxing.